You are listening to Confident Women Keep Growing, a podcast where women are being intentional and being more confident and investing in personal growth. Let me tell you, you put confidence and growth together, you have a formula that helps anyone make significant strides in reaching their full potential. I'm Nedra Owens, your host. Let's get started. Hello, family, and welcome back to yet another episode of Confident Women Keep Growing podcast. And I'm so glad you're able to tune in today because we're talking about something that could be the key to your next level in life. And my friends, we're going to talk about exposure, the power of exposure today. My goodness, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked around or stopped and paused in life and said, man, there's got to be more to life than this? And maybe you're feeling stuck right now, or maybe you've entered into that season at some point that you can identify with. But maybe it was not because you lacked the potential, because understand the potential is there. It's just hidden on the inside, right? Now, what we got to do is figure out how to draw it out of us, right? And of course, we use the help of God. But could it be because whatever it is, or you may feel stuck because maybe what's ahead of you have never really seemed possible to you? Could it be that? Has someone ever mentioned something to you or showed something to you and you were like, oh my goodness? And, I think back in my life about some times, as we relate to this topic, I was recently researching an author. And I picked up one of his books. I purchased one of his books, and I just wanted to find out more about the author in and of itself. Very popular author and things. And I said, I'm just curious to know what is the average cost to get him to come in and be a speaker? Because I'm very intrigued by those type of things. And I looked it up, and lo and behold, it said between $100,000 to $150,000. And I began to smile, and I was like, I'm not mad at you. But it wasn't until I became a part of the John Maxwell leadership team, and then I started learning more about speaking. I went to the IMC conferences and things of that nature that I began to learn, my goodness, people are getting paid top dollar to speak. And whereas before, I had no clue. What is that? That's called exposure. And see, that exposure helped me to go, you know what? That's me one day. And so this is why I love this topic. Exposure is so good. And today we're diving into how a lack of exposure can limit our ability to dream. It can limit our ability to grow and ultimately walk out what God has called us to do. So let's look a little bit more at exposure. When you think about exposure, it's simply being introduced to something new. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's people, whether it's a place, whether it's an idea. It could be a way of living. It's being introduced to something new. And when we sit down, really take the time as we go through this podcast, my goodness, think about sometimes right now, we're not even aware of what we just don't know. And what we haven't been exposed to. How many people listening have never really got out of their city? It's time to get out. There's a whole world out here. And God wants you to be able to see it so that you can see it on the inside of you. Biblically, we know we've always, you may have heard it said, you can't become what you've never seen. You got to see it in order for you to receive it. All of this is biblical. It's very much so biblical. And could it be that maybe our worlds that we're living in is kind of small, quote unquote, because our vision might be small? Could that be? Well, let's talk about some of the dangers of having limited exposure. What you're exposed to determines what you believe is possible. Do you believe that? See, I never crossed my mind to believe that it was possible to get 6 figures to go speak somewhere until I was exposed to that reality. Whereas before, man, I was just down in a few thousand, man, because that's all I was exposed to. My goodness. See, some people have never seen a healthy relationship. Some people have never seen somebody buy a house or live a life on purpose. And if you've never been exposed to those things, it could likely be what's hindering you from having that belief system that it can be an actual reality for you. If we look at the Israelites in the Bible, they were in bondage for over 400 years. And yet, even when God delivered them, and those who know the story, they still saw themselves as slaves. Why? Because they kept identifying to what they were exposed to, when in fact, God was trying to expose them to something greater, but they wouldn't allow themselves to go there because they were stuck back to where it was familiar, back to where it was comfortable. And see, we got to be careful that we don't do that. Even when they went out and scouted out the land and came back, they looked at the people and they were like, we were like grasshoppers. But see, it was a function in how they saw themselves, but it was also based upon their lack of exposure. And so we got to be careful that we don't allow our mindset to be so rigid, that we don't allow it to expand, so that God can expand our vision, expand our belief system. So let's look at Genesis chapter 13, and I'm going to reference that, and we're going to talk about Abraham. So we're not going to read it in particular, but if you get a chance, go back and look at it. Genesis chapter 13. And Abraham, this is a wonderful, wonderful story, because God told Abram, he said, listen, look around you, right? All this land that you see, I'm giving it to you. And that's powerful. And see, God placed Abram in a position where he had to see it as far as he could see. He says, listen, this is what belongs to you. And see, God connected Abram's vision with his inheritance. And so he said, listen, as far as you can see. Oh my goodness, this is so good. And so this links us to how important it is for us to have more exposure in our lives. Sometimes we cannot pinpoint it. Sometimes we cannot think. We cannot bring ideas to the table. Why? Because we're just stuck with what's comfortable. We're stuck in the land of everything is familiar to us. As I reflect on different conferences that I've attended in my lifetime, and the spaces that I have blessed to be in, I've seen some powerful people, and in particular, I've seen people of color in some rooms and spaces that were making the decisions, that were leading movements, that were walking in authority. I've seen some powerhouse women that commanded the room, and for me to see that, man, it freed me up. It expanded my vision. Why? Because I realized that because I was exposed to it, I was exposed to the reality that was possible for me. And so this is why it's so good to get exposure, to get out of your city, to go and get around different people, to get around people that think differently than you. I remember I was on a video call one time with Pastor Dee Freeman. And it was a call for pastors and pastors' wives. And it was interesting because she did the video call in her closet. Now, I've seen some nice closets, and what is so hilarious is that when I first moved here into my house, man, I thought my closet, because I could walk in it, and trust me, it's not that big, right? But when we first moved here, you would have thought I was walking into a mansion, which was in my closet. Now, of course, my vision has, oh my goodness, expanded, and that closet is so small. But back to Dee Freeman, Pastor Dee Freeman. She was doing it, but she said, listen, I wanted to do it in my closet, and then she scanned the camera so we could see what was in the closet. But she says, I wanted to just show some of you guys, basically just for exposure purposes. Because she relayed how in her earlier years of ministry that her and her husband, for example, a pastor took him and says, let me show you one of my houses. And she said her husband were like, one of? Like, you got more than one? But see, that began to give them something to what? Believe God for. Give them something to dream about. And this is why exposure is so good. Exposure awakens vision. That's how it's so powerful. It shows you that not only does life exist, but that this level of living is real. And that guess what? It can happen for you too. I think about also too, we've got to be purposeful and intentional to increase our exposure. We just cannot stay where we are and think the exposure is going to come to us. So how do we do that? My goodness, read books. I mean, read. I love to read books. I love to hear different people's thought processes about topics. I love to even go online and even look at different things online and articles and things of that nature. Travel. That's another way to gain exposure. I love to experience other people's cultures. I love it. And so I got it on my bucket list to go to some more countries. Yes, I have traveled to South America. I've been to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I've gone to a couple locations in Mexico. I've gone to Africa, but I want to go to other parts of Africa. But there's more countries I got to. Of course, I've been to the Grand Cayman, stuff like that. But there's more places I want to go and I want to experience because I want it to expand my level of exposure. You can even go to museums. You can travel. You can look at neighborhoods. Man, you can just ride around, find the nicest neighborhoods in your community. Guess what? That's exposure. That's giving you something visual to actually put your eyes on, to look at, to actually help you in the level of researching. I was talking to some friends the other day and he was like, man, we're talking about our next house. And he was talking about this the bathroom, and he started rattling off all these different things. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. And and it was so many different things. What did it do? It caused me to go out there and research it and look it up. And I said, you know what? Let me write this down. I want this particular aspect in our next house. Why? All because of exposure. Talk to new people. That's another way that you can be able to get more exposure. Talk to new people. You don't have to talk to everybody that's in your race. Hello. Talk to new people. Talk to people that are in different industries. It's so good. Talk to someone that's older. Talk to people that are younger. Try to get different aspects. Talk to experts. Man, if you really want your life to expand, I am learning more and more that I have to grow my network. And I have to allow more experts into my life so they can give me some advice. Because why? They can help me to broaden my thought process. And of course, we can all use all of our digital tools that we have at our disposal. So again, so whether you got a ton of money or whether you feel like you don't, because again, you do, right? All you got to do is tap into it. But the reality of it is that whether you have money to invest for more exposure or not, it doesn't have to cost you anything now in the day and age that we're living in. So again, as you are going through your social media, maybe back down off of some of the time that you're scrolling and use it to do some more for exposure. All right. Now, I just want to leave you with this. Listen, where is God calling you to see more? Trust me, He is calling you. He wants you to expand your vision. He wants to give you some witty inventions. He wants to give you some more ideas. He wants to expose you to the greater. And guess what? My goodness, when you can see it, just like Abraham when he saw it, my goodness, I believe he began to start seeing it on the inside of him. What dream is God trying to stir up inside of you? And He's trying to get you to get out of your comfort zone so that you can gain some more exposure. I think it's very interesting, in our more recent Bible study, we got to talking, and I don't know how we got on this topic, but we got to talking about double wides. And again, if you possess a double wide, this is not knocking double wides. If that's what you want, that's what you want. But somebody has shared how, growing up as a child, and whatnot, their dream was, man, if I could just get a double wide. But then as they got older and then they began to start seeing nice houses, mansions, different things. Their desires changed, their belief system changed, right? And it shifted. And we really got to talking about that. And sometimes what some people do is they take what they dreamed of having in their childhood, but then they won't let go. And then when God is trying to expand that and trying to show you the greater, right? Sometimes some people still try to hold on to it, but for what? Why? Because maybe they fear that they'll never get there. But you gotta deal with the fear. God wants to expose you to something greater. Why? Because he's drawing you in to see greater. Why? Because he wants you to experience greater in your life. God wants you to have the good life. And I'm telling you what, there is so much power in exposure. Make sure whatever you do, be intentional. Be intentional. When you coming up with your plans for the year, be intentional. You know what? I'm going to make sure I'm going to go to this conference, or I'm going to try to get this certification, or I'm going to make sure that I try to introduce myself to at least 2 new networks. You've got to be intentional and plan it. You just cannot expect that exposure is just going to run up to you, grab you, hug you, and say, come on. You've got to be intentional. And you got to believe that God is going to lead you and guide you so that you can have yet so much more exposure. So I want to leave you with this little simple quote today. It says, a ship is safe in a harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And that is related to you and I, my friend, right? We are ships, but a lot of us are safe in the harbor. It's time for your ship to sail and go out into the waters so you can see your God-given destiny, but you're not going to get there if you stay in the harbor. Ladies, until next week, be confident and keep growing.